Welcome to Gas City Gaming's Aether Revolt set review. Today we will be taking a look at all the multicolored cards in Aether Revolt. I will preface this by saying, once again, I am not a pro. I haven't top 8 GP8 or GPs all around the world. I haven't been to the Pro Tour or anything. These are just my feelings about these cards. About, for the most part, limited formats, but also if I think they can make an impact further than that, standard, modern, etc. We'll make a note of that as well. But for now, we'll start in with Ajani Unyielding. He is 4 generic mana, a green and a white, for a mythic planeswalker, Ajani. He starts at 4 loyalty, has 3 abilities. His first is a +2. It says reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. His -2 is exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power, Swords to Plowshares. Then his third ability as alt is a -9. It says put 5 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, and 5 loyalty counters on each other planeswalker you control. So at that point, you're pretty much, like most alts, is just to win the game. Johnny, for what he does, you get to look at reveal the top 3, put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand, rest on the bottom. So if you see a couple creatures, you can then play out those creatures, because we're already assuming you're at 6 because you're playing Ajani. So just gives you your gas, right? Look, reveal the top 3, everything you can play goes in your hand. No land, and it has to be permanent, so any removal spells you lose out on, any land on its own you lose out on, but you just get to draw your regular card as well. So every turn you get a look at 4 cards, right? That seems pretty good. With a full deck, that's 1/15 of your deck every turn. So by the time you play Ajani, that's probably going to be 10% of your deck every turn. -2, a removal spell, seems good. Yes, it gives your opponent life, but when you get into the more constructed formats, giving your opponent life isn't as big of a deal. And usually in limited, giving your opponent life, if you're just exiling a creature of theirs, is an okay trade-off, because you'll get that life back when you attack after you remove their creature. And then if you can make it to his ult, so he comes down at 4, and he +2s, 6, 8, 10. So on the 4th turn he's down, he can ult and still live at 1 loyalty, if he hasn't been attacked or damaged whatsoever yet. And if you're at that point and you have a number of creatures out, and they all get +5/+5 with counters, not even until the end turn, but they actually get 5 counters, then you're just going to do good. The 5 loyalty counters on other planeswalkers won't happen as much with limited. Better not anyway, unless you're stupid lucky. But it won't happen as much with limited. But that's the thing, because it won't happen until 4 turns later, and green-white isn't usually the control deck you see. But this is, I can see Ajani just being something you're going to plus, because in my opinion anyway, you want to play this in an Obzon deck, so you can have white and black for your good removal spells, and your green for things like this, and just good value creatures. Same with white, you know. So you can just plus, get more creatures, plus, get more creatures, plus, get more creatures, eventually -9. All those creatures become ridiculously huge and swarm over for the win. So Ajani, I'm just gonna, all your planeswalkers, if you have anything remotely playable in your other colors, like in green and white, and you pull this guy in your limited pool, play it. I hopefully don't have to tell you that, but you should just play it. I can see it as like a top end, not as good, obviously, as Elspeth when she was in standard, but it's that kind of 6-mana walker that comes in, gets you a creature, lets you play that creature. It's not 3/1/1s, and his minus isn't a board wipe, but it is a removal spell. So it doesn't protect itself just on its own. You do have to draw into something. Like if you play it with an empty hand into an empty board, you do have to draw into something to protect it, right? But after that, if you can live for a turn, it starts really turning the tide pretty quick. Lets you pick, your non-land permanents out of your deck, play it, protect him, or kill something, and just go from there. So I definitely can see it coming into standard as well for Ajani Unyielding. Now, our next card is Ajani Valiant Protector. You might not recognize him. Ajani Valiant Protector, we also have the Tezzeret version as well. These guys are out of the Planeswalker decks. These guys are standard legal, so we're going to have a look at them. You won't get them in your limited pool if you're playing a pre-release or drafting, because they aren't in packs. They are only in the Planeswalker decks. That's the only place you can get Ajani Valiant Protector or the Tezzeret that we'll see later. So he's the same price, Ajani Valiant Protector. It's 4 generic, green and white. For Planeswalker Ajani, comes in with 4 mana. 4 loyalty. He has a +2 ability. It says put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature, so you make something bigger. Another +1 says reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So not bad. You, instead of plussing and getting anything, you do just plus, get a creature, put the rest on the bottom. Then he has a -11, so it takes an extra turn past the other Ajani in order to ult him, but his ult is put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is your life total. That creature gains trample until end of turn. So if you're still at an appreciable life total, you just win, right? Unless they pile up, unless they have a bunch of creatures and they pile them all in front. Even then, they just traded their board away for 1 creature, maybe, right? So this Ajani, I don't know if I see this guy seen standard, right? Again, you can't see in limited, so we won't even talk about that. I don't know if I see this guy seen standard just because it doesn't protect itself at all. It has no removal mode. If you drop other Ajani, you can Swords to Plowshares their creature, right? You drop this Ajani, you'll reveal cards. Like, you drop this Ajani into an empty board, you'll reveal cards and get something, but you probably won't be able to play it that turn if you play this guy on turn 6. But the next turn he's protected, so if you can live past that, you're okay. But I don't think this guy is good enough to see standard play. Like, they're not supposed to be. We'll talk about the Tezzeret when he comes up. That one might be, but this guy isn't supposed to be and won't. Dark Intimations is 2 generic mana, a blue, black, and red Grixis colors. Ooh. For gold sorcery, for random sorcery. Gold. Wow, really? Gold. Okay, it's for a rare sorcery. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, then discards a card. You return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, then draw a card. Cruel Ultimatum it is not, but it's trying. When you cast a Bolus planeswalker spell, exile Dark Intimations from your graveyard. That planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. So, the next set, if you haven't looked into it at all, is Amonkhet. It's kind of an Egypt-themed plane where Nicol Bolas is kind of controlling everything, or that's what everybody's kind of thinking right now. So this is the Dark Intimations, Nicol Bolas' colors, Grixis colors, the blue, black, red colors that are in this spell. So we can kind of, this is the intimations, the indications that something bad is going to happen. Somebody's behind everything. We finally, story-wise, probably find out that Nicol Bolas is behind everything, right? So hence why we have, right now, I don't think it's playable for 5 mana to sack a creature, discard a card, and you return a creature and draw a card. I don't think it's good enough to do that. But depending on what the Bolas Planeswalker can do, so right now, not playable. This is made to be playable when Amonkhet comes around, when we have our Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. Depending on what he can do, if that coming in with an extra loyalty really makes a difference, then this might be playable. But right now, I don't think so. Limited, like, I don't think so even in limited, because sacking a creature, 1 creature, so that's a Thopter, that's a Servo, that's discarding a card for 5 mana. It's not good enough in my opinion in limited or in standard right now. We gotta wait to judge this one fairly, because it might as well not have that second paragraph on it right now, right? But standard, when the next set comes out, it's kind of neat that they're doing this. I hope they don't do it too much. Like, I don't want to waste 5 cards out of the set just to build theme for the next set. 1's okay, this is okay. But I don't want to do that if they start, because this is neat, but I don't want them to overdo it, right? So I don't want them to waste cards just doing that, because you can't play this right now. I don't think it's good enough anyway. Hidden Stockpile. This, if you've watched any of the other set reviews that we've done so far, this is the black-white enchantment that I've been talking about. Hidden Stockpile is a white and a black for an uncommon enchantment that has Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. It has 1 generic mana, sacrifice a creature, scry 1. Okay. So, at the beginning of your end step, something left. Make a servo. 1 generic mana, sack a creature, scry 1. You can sack that creature, and at the end of your turn, your Revolt trigger happens. At the beginning of your first main phase, or whenever you want during your turn, sack a creature, scry 1. You're going to get another creature on your end step. Set it off next turn. or to set off your Fatal Push, or to set off your any whatever other Revolt card you could possibly think of, right? So this is that card that, not infinitely, but as long as you have that mana to sack something, and somebody doesn't kill your servo or kill all of your other creatures, this just keeps getting you servos, keeps getting you Revolt triggers, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And Scry 1 was not a bad ability. I see this being a part of Standard. So first of all, if we're talking about Standard, we're talking about Limited and everything as well. So if we're talking about how this is going to be involved in Standard, I think, like I said, I can see possibly an Obzon Revolt deck, with this being at the heart of that, and then just a really good value creatures like, your Revolt, good black, white, and green Revolt creatures, along with like your solid Planeswalkers in those colors. Your Gideon would go in there, no problem. Or even this could also go in your Esper deck. So hidden Stockpile with Tezzeret Planeswalker that we'll see later. And you can sack this and to scry more. You can sack this to set off your Fatal Push, and just any number of things. And it just makes 1/1s. You want to chump with something, you can chump with something because you get this guy. And I see this being a part of stuff. I've had friends who've talked about this seeing Modern. I'm not a big enough expert on Modern yet to comment on that. So I won't, but I definitely see it being a part of Standard for sure. Maverick Thopteris is 3 generic mana, a blue and a red. For a uncommon creature, it is a human artificer. It is a 2/2 with Improvise. If you don't know what Improvise does, it says your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you are done activating mana abilities pays for 1 generic mana. So if you have a couple servos out, you can tap both of those and pay 3 for this guy. 1 generic, a red and a blue. When Maverick Thopter enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. If these are your colors in your sealed pool or in your draft, you love this guy. Because if you can get him out, even if you can get him for 5, I'm fine paying 5 for this. But if you can get out for 4 or even 3 mana, you're just having a good old time. Can you imagine this guy with that guy who made Thopters with energy? You're just having a good time at that point if you're playing both of those guys in your draft deck. Oh my goodness. I don't think this one's good enough to see Standard. I would rather play, I forget the name of that, Thopter Assembler? Whirler Virtuoso. Whirler Virtuoso is what his name. I would rather play that than this in a Standard environment, and that at least hasn't seen a big impact on Standard yet. Again, with the rotation and the bans, or not the rotation, just the bans, we might see that switch around, but we'll see. But Limited, if this is in your colors, because it's 2 color, it's a little harder to slot in. You could splash for it as well. It's just like if you're playing Red X, and you could splash a little bit of blue. You're playing Blue X, you could splash a little bit of red easily as well. For this, or maybe another good card. But definitely play this in draft and Limited, 100%. Standard, like I said, I don't think it's quite good enough to break that shell. Oath of Ajani, however, it's a green and a white for a rare legendary enchantment. When Oath of Ajani enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I would pay 2 mana for that in Limited all day, even if that was just sorcery. But it also says Planeswalker spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's probably the line that makes it playable in Standard. So you're saying I can turn 3 Gideon. One of the best 4-drops you can make turns into a 3-drop. That seems pretty good. I did manage to pull a couple of these in my pool. Obviously, I couldn't really use them because I was playing different colors because it was one of my only good cards in either of these colors. So I really want to force that. But if you're anywhere near these colors with some decent playables in your Limited pool or drafting, take it. It's going to see Standard play because it makes your Planeswalkers 1 cheaper. And say you have Nissa out and you've made a bunch of plants, they're all, bigger plants now, plus your next Nissa's cheaper, and it's going to see Standard play. It's probably one of the better Oaths, and there are some really good Oaths. So there's reason it's legendary, so you can't make all your Planeswalkers too cheaper, but it's definitely a really good card. Going to see Standard play. Play it in your Limited decks. You could even play it if you don't necessarily have a Planeswalker, just because You get a counter on everything for 2 mana. That can swing things sometimes. That can be worth it in limited, so I would even play that. But if you get a Planeswalker, then you're just got gravy on the French fries. I'm in Canada, so poutine. Gravy and cheese on your French fries with this card if you got a Planeswalker in your sealed pool. But you're going to see standard play, so definitely play it in your limited decks if you can. Outland Boar is 2 generic mana, a red and a green, for a uncommon creature boar. It is a 4/4, and it says Outland Boar can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. This guy does some work, especially if your opponent has a lot of low power creatures like just walls and stuff, or just a bunch of servos. This is going to get by all those. So 4/4/4, this will easily hit. If that's all their board is, it's going to hit them for 8 or 12 just on its own. Never mind whatever else you're doing, right? Definitely a really good card. I don't think it's going to see standard play, just because people aren't often playing creatures with power 2 or less in standard. But do like card, sealed, play it. If it's anywhere near your colors, again, you can splash for it easily as well if you're playing either one of these colors and something else. Splash for it, it's going to be worth it. It's just a good card. And if you're already in red-green and you open one of these guys up, Merry Christmas to you, my friend. Yeah, limited pools, or so your limited pools, so your sealed or your drafts, pick it, play it, and have fun. Renesade Rallier is generic mana, a green and a white, for a uncommon creature human warrior. It is 3/2 and has Revolt. When Renesade Rallier enters the battlefield, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, return target permanent card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's pretty good. So you could sack something and bring it back right away. If something was killed earlier, you could bring it back. So this is good early and late. So if it's really like your oath, somebody killed your oath, you can bring your oath back, put a +1 counter on this guy. And anything else you have, if even just something simple as an implement, which we'll see in our next review with the artifacts. If you played an implement and then sack it, play this guy, you get your implement back again. So you set off your Revolt for this and anything else, plus you got to draw a card because your your implement went to the graveyard, and you put it back, you get the enter effect. You're just going to have a good time with this card, I think. Again, if it's anywhere near your colors, there's always these uncommons usually in a set that put you into a set of colors, or you can splash for them, and they're almost always good and almost always playable. Again, same thing with this guy. Could be standard playable. Again, if that Obzan Revolt deck is a thing, this brings you something back that you can then sack again. This brings our enchantment that we were talking about earlier. It's 2 mana, brings that back to the battlefield if they kill it. Lets you keep rolling with your Revolt triggers, right? So could get into that shell possibly. Definitely a little bit more on the aggressive side because it's a 3/2 for 3. But so obviously, if you're talking about standard, play it in your limited decks. You're gonna have a good time. Renesade Wheelsmith is a generic mana, a red and a white, for a uncommon creature that is a dwarf pilot, and it's a 3/2. It says whenever Renesade Wheelsmith becomes tapped, target creature can't block this turn. So that does a couple things. So if this is your only creature out and they have one creature, this attacks, that creature can't block, you get in there for 3. What you can also do is if you have a vehicle, you play this, crew it, their creature can't attack because that's now tapped because you crewed that, and your vehicle gets in. So it's kind of got that bonus of being a pilot, gives that thing to it. Could be in the red white vehicles deck because it gets rid of their blocker and it's cheaply, aggressively costed. You already do that. Those slots are pretty tight in there though, so we'll have to show its worth for that. But you know, it tends to be a bit more of an aggressive deck. So if they get a blocker down and you don't have a removal spell, this essentially gets rid of that blocker. So could be a good card, possibly get into that standard deck or that constructed deck. And definitely if you're anywhere near these colors, again, play this card. If you've got some good vehicles, it's even more of a payoff. But just good card is good, and you'll have a good time. Rogue Refiner is a generic, a green and a blue, for a uncommon creature that is a human rogue. It's a 3/2, and says when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and you get 2 energy. Now, was it Cloud Blazer? This is not. It's not a flyer. It's also not 5 mana. But, you know, and this is what your blue-green deck wants to be doing. It wants to be drawing cards. It wants to be getting energy. 3/2 is fine. Again, does die to shock, and I know that whole test controversy, but it is a thing. But It's 3/2. It's going to trade up a lot of time if you're just attacking and blocking with creatures, and this just helps. The drawing the card and getting energy is going to help fuel your bigger cards. That's kind of what all these gold cards in this cycle are doing. They're just helping fuel your other bigger stuff for the most part, right? But again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I want to hammer this point home. If you are near either of these colors, feel free to splash this. It's worth splashing for it, right? And this, you have a really narrow strategy that you open a lot of good cards for. Don't splash it then, but usually I'm going to splash for any one of these guys. Spire Patrol is a 2 generic mana, a white and a blue, for an uncommon creature that is a human soldier. It is a 3/2. It's a flyer. When Spire Patrol enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next on tap step. This is one of those cards that tells you how to play a deck. Blue-white flyers, 3/2, taps things down. So okay, so this is an awesome card if you are drafting or building that seal deck. You are super happy to open this. You would pick this if you're already in this deck. You would pick this over a number of rares that are out there, especially if they're off color for you and you're already kind of committed to this blue-white strategy. You're gonna pick this. It's evasive. It taps something and they're down. Maybe they're big guy. Maybe they're flyers so you can finally get over. Maybe they're reach guy. It's just real good. I love the art on this as well. This is actually a bad guy, bad girl. Girl. So this is person actually works for the consulate. Says after I examine your cargo and check your papers, then you may be on your way. So that's why it taps it, because it's checking your cargo and your papers. So that's why you're tapped and can't go yet, because she's examining the vehicle, right? So I just little flavor bit. But again, if you're playing that blue-white flyers deck, this is gonna be really good. Not good enough to make it into standard, but 100% playable in your sealed, your draft decks. For that blue-white flyers, love this card for that deck. Tezzeret the Schemer is 2 generic mana, a blue and a black, for a mythic planeswalker, Tezzeret. It enters with 5 loyalty counters, has +1, create a colorless artifact token named Ethereum Cell, with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It has a -2. It says target creature gets +X, -X, until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Also has -7 for his ultimate. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your combat on your turn, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 5/5. So all your little Ethereum cells, one at a time only, become a 5/5. Yeah, and they stay 5/5s actually. It doesn't say until end of turn, so they stay 5/5. So every turn, you can make a 5/5 out of an artifact you already have. So that's pretty good. This +1 combos really, really well with Fatal Push. So I think we went over that when we talked about Fatal Push in the black set review, but if you didn't see that, you can play Tezzeret, +1, you get your artifact. So your artifact taps and sacks, leaves the battlefield, and you can sack it for 1 black mana on your turn, their turn, doesn't matter, it's an artifact, doesn't have summoning sickness. Tap, sack, it leaves the battlefield, sets off your Revolt trigger, so your Fatal Push kills any 4-drop creature now, 4-drop or less. So that seems good. The rest of the card I'm not super excited about. Like his -7 is a way to win the game. So if you're in that Esper control deck and you got a couple Tezzerets and a couple Torrential Gear Hulks, his -7 to get that emblem is a way to win the game. You can get it as little as 3 turns later if you want to sacking your Tezzeret for his ult. His -2 is very conditional removal. You already have to have a lot of artifacts to kill something with his -2 on turn 4. So that's potentially not easy to do. And he doesn't really protect himself when he comes down. So don't know if I'm iffy about it. Limited Planeswalkers, you're pretty much just always going to play. Again, if you're near either of these colors, play your Planeswalker, because Planeswalkers are good. Again, don't force it. Like if you have like 5 playable blue-black cards, don't force it. Right? But it's okay if you can splash, because there's a lot of mana fixing in this set. If you have a lot of mana fixing, there's the map. We'll talk about that in our next in the artifact review, but we'll see. So because he gets along so well with some of the removal in the set, I can see him being played as maybe a 2 of in a control deck, but past that, I don't see him becoming a a really big force in Standard. CB playing for some utility more than anything, right? But could be good, but it's more a utility side. He's not going to be the next Gideon, right? It's not going to be I'm making a deck, it has white in it, 4 Gideons. I don't think you're going to do that with Tezzeret the Schemer, unfortunately. I do like him. I do like Tezzeret. I don't mean to bash him. Tezzeret, Agent Bolus was my first Planeswalker I ever had, so I'm a little partial to him. Just bought this guy today. But speaking of Tezzeret Master of Metal. So this is, again, our Planeswalker deck version. Again, you cannot open this in your packs. It is only available in the Planeswalker decks, the pre-built decks that you can buy. He is a 4 generic mana, blue and a black, for a mythic Planeswalker Tezzeret, enters with 5 loyalty counters. Sounds familiar. His +1, it says, reveal cards from top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Cool. So you just flip over cards till you get an artifact. Hopefully it's an impactful one, but basically that's your tutor for one. Well, not tutor. That's the completely wrong word. Ignore that. My goodness. I'm tired. I'm doing all these in a row. There's a lot of work. Put that card into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in every order. So you're not putting the rest into your graveyard, right? Which could help fuel Delirium, but if you run out of some good stuff, we don't want to have that. Put your artifact card into your hand. Seems good. Okay. -3 is what I'm really excited about, though. Target opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control. With Aether Revolt, and Kaladesh, you can and clues and stuff. I think you can really crank out the number of artifacts. I think that could be a thing. So Tezzeret could come down -3 and hit your opponent for 6 to 8. I think that could be a thing. Now these guys aren't meant to be standard playable, but that really seems like it could be a viable strategy to me. Is that this guy comes down, just domes your opponent for a bunch. And nothing else that lets you find your artifacts. So if you're playing in this blue-black artifact deck, flip over into your Gearhulk. Okay, Gearhulk in my hand. I mean, you could flip over into whatever, some little cheap dinky artifact. But even then, that's getting it out of your deck at least, right? So -8, then, is gain control of all artifacts and creatures target opponent controls. Take your opponent's board. In my opinion, the ult of this guy is better with a control deck. The -3, in my opinion, is better than the removal, the conditional removal that Schemer has. So I think the -3 is better because it just domes your opponent as soon as it comes down. +1 on Tezzeret the Schemer is better because it gets along with more cards better. +1 on this guy, not as good. It's just not. But I think the minus abilities on Master of Metal are better. And again, at the end of this, I will phrase that I am not a Pro Tour player or winning tournaments or anything, and there's probably very good reasons for that. There's my opinions on these cards, and this one reminds me more of Agent of Bolus. Maybe that's why I like it a little better as well than Schemer, but yeah, I think this guy could see standard play in the same deck that this guy does, but because you make the artifacts of this one, you play this and just dome somebody for a bunch, right? But anyway, I know you have to sacrifice them because they're both Planeswalker Tezzeret, so you play Master Metal, you have to sacrifice the Schemer. But anyway, I'll stop flipping back and forth now. Sorry, guys. So that's what I think of him. So Planeswalker deck card that could get into standard. They are standard legal. They're legal for all the constructed purposes, but you just won't open them in packs. You can only get them in those pre-constructed Planeswalker decks. Tezzeret's Touch is generic blue and a black for a uncommon enchantment aura. It says Enchant Artifact. Enchanted Artifact is a creature with base power and toughness 5/5 in addition to its other types. When Enchanted Artifact is put into a graveyard, return that card to its owner's hand. Now, I asked kind of our local rules guy about this. I don't know all the rules questions. He's the guy we usually go to. I enchanted a Dakar Peafowl with this. And what he told me, again, was it's a 5/5 that I can then pay blue to give flying. It's just basically just changes the Peafowl's power and toughness, essentially. It keeps all its abilities. I think that's correct because it doesn't say it gains or loses any kind of abilities. It just artifact as a creature with base power and toughness 5/5 in addition to its other types. So it's keeping other types and everything. And then when it dies, comes back into your hand. So this did some work for me because I made my Peafowl a flying 5/5 that just dung, dung, dung. Then he drew a removal spell for it, and I got the Peafowl back and replayed it on my turn. So that seemed pretty good. If you have a decent amount of artifacts in your deck, again, if you're kind of stretching, you have a couple artifacts, maybe don't risk it then. Because I did have times where this just sat in my hand because I didn't have any artifacts. I'm just like, sad with my Tezzeret's Touch in my hand, not doing anything. But if you do have a decent amount of artifacts, definitely play this guy if you're anywhere near these colors. Just, it gets good. Pay 3 mana for a 5/5. That whenever that dies, it comes back to your hand. So if you enchant an implement with it, it goes to the graveyard, you get your draw card, and then you get back to your hand. So that seems good. Weldfast Engineer is a generic, a black, and a red for an uncommon creature that is a human artificer. It says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And it is a 3/3. So, again, this might be the worst of the cycle, because you need to have an artifact creature to get any benefit out of this. It's a 3/3 for 3, so if you're in these colors, you're going to play it, right? Or even if you can splash for it potentially. But you need to have an artifact creature for it to get the benefit out of it. So that makes it a little, again, not going to see standard play, but that makes it a little too conditional to be an auto-include. But as a 3/3 for 3, I'd play it. It makes it the worst of the cycle because its other benefit is conditional. Like, it's not like the red-white one that when you tap it, something can't block. No matter what, when you tap this, something can't block. It doesn't need an artifact to do that. It doesn't need so much mana to do that. When it taps, something can't block, flat out. And this needs that artifact to give the artifact +2/+0. So, because that might be the worst of the cycle. But again, if you're in these colors, you're going to play it because it's a solid creature for that. So, and we move on to Winding Constrictor, our last card of the multicolor cards that we're going to review for today. It is a black and a green for a uncommon creature snake. It is a 2/3 that says, so it's already really aggressive, 2/3 for 2 mana. If one or more counters would be placed on an artifact or creature you control, that many of those counters +1 are placed on that permanent instead. If you would get one or more counters, you get that many of those counters +1 instead. So in your commander decks, this is where my mind went first. In your commander decks, your experience counters, you get another experience counter. Your energy counters, you get another energy counter. And our like Obzon deck, a possible Obzon Revolt deck, if stuff enters with +1 counters, it gets more. If artifacts need counters for something, they get more. Doesn't do planeswalkers because that would be broken, but definitely a good card. I can see this edging its way into standard, into like an Obzon deck. Like I said, I think that might be a thing. But definitely for those colors, for green, black, if you're anywhere near those, again, you're gonna play this guy because you play your Swamp Force, play a 2/3, you're gonna have a good time. That's gonna be a good card for you. So limited. You're going to play it, your constructed decks, maybe some kind of standard, but I do like the card. I would play it in my draft. I draft it. I would play it in my sealed if I was in those colors. So that brings us to the end of our multicolored cards for Aether Revolt. If you guys like the video, if you agree with me or disagree with me, love to hear your comments down below. Please let us know if you liked the video. Let me know. If you didn't like the video, let me know how I can improve it. Right? I want to make these videos aren't for me; they're for you guys. So you can like, share, subscribe the video. Please let other people know what I do, what kind of stuff we're up to over here, how much fun we're having. Hopefully you're having fun if you're still watching at the end of the video. You can follow down at twitch.tv/Dave865 as well. So when we stream, I can let you know. At Dave2619, we usually announce on there when we put new videos out or when we're streaming as well. So thanks for joining me today. Thanks for spending some of your day with me. Hopefully you enjoy these cards, you enjoy the set, and have an awesome rest of your day.